turns out to be the truth, we will know how to adapt to it, and we will know how to deal with it. We will know how to accept it and make something of it. We have to put this on the table, and we have to deal with it seriously and think about it seriously and get more people to think about it seriously and put it on the agenda, put it in the curriculum. It's not in the curriculum, there are no books, it's not in the Jewish schools, it's not in the Jewish text. It's a subject that must be discussed because our children are talking about it. Our children are worried about it, are troubled by it, and there's no answers coming to them.
What do you think are some of the key issues the Jewish youngsters, say in high school or college, are troubled by in this general realm?
I would say an answer that can come from your writings to the Jewish high school student or to the Jewish university student is that what they are searching for within the divine, within the world of God, and within their own daily life is a sense of spirituality and meaning which they're not finding in their curriculum and in their life. They find something missing, which is one of the reasons that so many of our finest boys and girls look elsewhere and find an answer elsewhere. But the truth is, that divine potential is talking to them. They have that divine potential.
And it's straight from the Torah itself.
It's Jewish.
If you want it to be.
It's Jewish.
If you wish it to be. Right.
The rabbi with the long beard can teach it easily and well.
If he wants to.
If he wants to.
If he wants to. Right.
If he wants to. Right now they don't want to, and they don't even have the question. But their students have the question. And the questions of the students are not being addressed. Sadly, when I lived in the Far East, and I was the only Jewish contact for all the gurus, etc., who provided a spiritual meaning to their life. And they would come to me and say that, Rabbi, our best followers, your people are so spiritual, our best followers are from your people. They said it as a compliment. I was very hurt by it, because in fact, they are Jews. You have lamas now of Tibetan Buddhism, who were bar mitzvah and sayasit, who were very Jewish and of Jewish families, but did not have this book, and there was no message for them. They all had their bar mitzvah and left.
Well, perhaps the problem is that the Rav, Rabbi, so much of distinguishes between Ish Hadas and Shadat, between Homer Religiosus and so on, Ish Halacha. As though there's some sort of divide between spiritual man, who goes off to to contemplate the world from the top of a mountain, and religious man, halachic man, the one who is Mekayim Torah and mitzvahs. I think the problem in contemporary education in yeshivas is that somehow that spirituality that's supposed to derive from fulfilling commandments and is missing. That's what's missing. It's not that there needs to be a special emphasis on spirituality. Spirituality has to be tied to the performance of the various mitzvahs which we're obligated to fulfill.
It's easily there.
Right.
We also have a mystical tradition that we don't talk about.
Right.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is that Judaism doesn't need a metaphysics, because classically, if you shomer mitzvos, spirituality should derive from that.
Ideally.
Right. However, Judaism does not say that.
Right.
Judaism says that's true, but we also want a metaphysics. Judaism says we want both. Judaism does not say no, that's sufficient. I mean, you might have a section of Judaism that says that. It should all derive from it. In the shomer mitzvah, observe a mitzvah properly, everything should flow from that. But
no, I disagree with you. I'm just suggesting that the idea of separating out the notion of spirituality is something that is very attractive. Everyone wants to have this metaphysical, this otherworldly experience. It's not Judaism. The spirituality has to be bound, earth-bound, and within the context
it can be both.
Well, this Summa Metaphysica binds it to the mitzvah very directly. It binds kosher directly to quest for potential. It binds many of the mitzvahs very directly to this. But the metaphysics cannot apply just to Orthodox Jews. Metaphysics has to also apply universally.
It's universal.
And this metaphysics is proposed to work universally. It works for the young boys in Cheder, if the Rabbi wants it to, and it works for the agnostic in Timbuktu. So that's the finesse here, that it does purport to dance at both weddings. And it's a tightrope finesse, but I believe it works.
Right. This reminds me of a famous joke. Actually, it's a cartoon from many, many years ago. These two women are sitting in shul on Yom Kippur, and one of them is reading a book. It's not a Jewish book. It's something a missionary on the street gave her, and she said, one woman who was reading the book says to the other, "Those Christians, they have these lovely things called Psalms. How come we don't have them?"
Fair enough.
Which is to say, in essence, I think we need both the spirituality and the grounding in halakha. I mean, you know, this was the goal of the Muslim movement.
Correct.
Was to try to bring the spirituality with the halachic observance and with the rigorous yeshiva type orientations.
When you speak of Rabbi Soloveitchik, he was also involved with existentialism.
Absolutely.
So existentialism is not pure rationalism, you know.
But everything that he took from the secular world, he was able to place within the context of halakhic Judaism, where he saw that there was a commonality, or it was not a violation of any basic principle.
And people say to me, well, you present this metaphysics, Maimonides, the Rambam presented his metaphysics. What do you say to that? I say to that, and I'll ask you, if Maimonides read the work, I think he might say maybe. I don't think he would say no. I don't think Maimonides was exposed to this level, to these concepts. And had he been exposed, I believe he might have beat me to the punch. That's my conjecture.
I would say this: I can't see a circumstance under which Rambam would have said absolutely no, unequivocally to anything of a philosophical bent. Whether he would have said yes, you're right, or whatnot, that I can't say. That's conjecture. But his open-mindedness, his statement even that, I believe it's in Guide for the Perplexed, that if he actually believed in Briat HaOlam Yesh Mi Yesh, that is, creation of the world from primordial material to something else, he could work it into the first 3 verses of the book of Genesis. In other words, he was sufficiently open-minded that he would be willing to take even that Aristotelian concept, which is totally antithetical to everything Judaism stands for, or at least, purports to stand for in terms of cosmology. Jewish cosmology traditionally is Bria Yesh Mi'ayin,
Ex nihilo.
Creation from nothingness.
From nothingness.
Right.
But he said, nevertheless, if he really believed that it was so, he would be able to work Aristotle's position in.
His guide to the perplexed is for the perplexed of his day.
Right, exactly.
He doesn't write 800 years forward or 800 years backwards.
Right.
And it's like the grandchildren of Rashi writing that if Rashi would have known what we know, he would have perhaps, he would have used the more current information. I think if we were to guess what the Rambam would do with this material, I think he would read it seriously and he would say it has potential.
It has a quest for potential.
Right. And the Rambam stands a giant, towering giant today. And remember, in his day, he was somewhat of a pariah. He was excommunicated, banned, whatnot, and took hundreds of
But
years.
it passed the test of time.
He passed the test of time.
Well, I suspect if you were here today to be a Rabbi at YU, not the Rosh Hashiva at Torah V'das.
Right, but be that as it may, you must understand that if you ask this random high school student about the Rambam, Rabbi Tokayer is alluding to, he would not jump up and down for joy. The Rambam
has no meaning.
It's not speaking his language. It's simply not speaking his language. It's not singing the right things.
It's a different age.
It's just not working for him.
No one's yelling about anthropomorphism.
Right. So
dealing with different questions.
So the Rambam may have stood the test of time, maybe a towering figure, but it doesn't work in contemporary times for those not wedded to the Orthodox Jewish establishment as part of the establishment. Yes, it works for the rabbinics who are wedded to the establishment and who go with the program. But beyond that, it doesn't really have any resonance, nor do you even hear about it at all. It almost never comes up to that extent. It's not even disagreed with. It just doesn't come up.
Yeah, I don't know many of the more narrow narrowly focused yeshivas that are teaching philosophy of any sort. So
Also not,
It's not in the curriculum.
also true.
I went to the yeshiva of Flatbush and then YU, and we took 3 years of philosophy, two of which more or less were the recapitulation of concepts of classical, the bits and pieces. Third year was more of an attempt to grapple with exactly what Rabbi Tokayer was saying, that high school students have questions, and how do we frame that within a Jewish context. I think the other issue, of course, is that we have to have, each generation needs a guide for the perplexed. It's interesting to note that in the 19th century, early 19th century,
Krachmal wrote that.
exactly, a rabbi by the name of Nachman Krachmal, who was one of the founders of the Galician Haskalah. This was a movement of enlightenment trying to recover, in essence, Jewish historiography, which was the big issue of the day, rather than metaphysics. Wrote a book. It's not clear if that was the title he wanted, or that's the title that Leopold Zuntz imposed on it.
That's the title we know.
But that's the title we know it of. It's Guide for the Perplexed of Our Day.
Right.
And perhaps every few generations we need to have another Guide for the Perplexed, because life is perplexing and the world changes, and though certain constants do remain identifiable, but yet nevertheless the things change. You mention in the book that there's this constant quest for farther and higher and more and advance, which raises in each generation a whole slew of other questions. Professor Garrin and I teach history of the Holocaust courses, and I don't know how you start your class, but I start my class by mentioning that I'd like to be able to put this to a happy ending. I'd like to be able at the end of the day to give a happy ending for this course. And I do try to. I end not with the liberation of the concentration camps, but with the establishment of the State of Israel. That said, I also tell the students, however, note that humanity has this amazing ability to walk along the path of knowledge, trip over some essential truth, the ultimate truth of the universe, and then pick itself up, dust itself off, and walk on obliviously. Think about how many genocides we've had since 1945.
And maybe that's the negative side of this quest to move forward and higher in terms of nihilism. I think that one of the problems in the modern world is this notion that there are no absolutes in terms of good and evil. And so there's less of a horror, or less of a response to the